Dr. Oliver Thompson was having a very bad day. The quantum drive wasn't supposed to work this well. In fact, it wasn't supposed to work at all. It was just a test run to collect data for his research paper. But here he was, in a modified cargo ship that had somehow punched through space-time, with his research assistant Emma Clark shouting numbers at him and Queen's "Don't Stop Me Now" blasting through the ship's speakers. "Dr. Thompson," Emma yelled over the music, her blonde hair floating in the ship's failing artificial gravity. "We're picking up structures ahead. Massive ones. And they're definitely not Earth satellites." Oliver pushed his glasses up his nose and stared at the screens. The vessels ahead were elegant, clearly built by civilizations far more advanced than humanity. They were arranged in a perfect circle around what appeared to be a massive space station. It looked exactly like the sort of place where important aliens would meet to discuss important alien things. "Well," he said, trying to sound calmer than he felt, "this could be a bit awkward." The ship's communication system crackled to life. A stern voice speaking perfect English came through. "Unidentified vessel, you have entered restricted Galactic Council space. Your method of arrival has damaged 3 layers of quantum shielding. Please explain yourself." Emma reached for the radio, but Oliver got there first. "Hello. Terribly sorry about that. Dr. Oliver Thompson here, from Earth. We were just testing the new drive system. Didn't expect it to actually work. Any chance we could pop in for a chat? We brought tea." There was a long silence. The music continued to play. "Is that music we're detecting?" the voice asked. "Oh, yes, sorry about that too. Emma, could you turn that down?" Oliver fumbled with the controls. "It helps me think better when testing potentially fatal experimental drives." Another silence followed. "Please maintain your position. A guide ship will dock with you shortly." 3 hours later, Oliver and Emma found themselves in front of the Galactic Council, a group of beings from across the galaxy, all staring at them with various arrangements of eyes, sensory organs, and what Oliver strongly suspected were weapons. "Let me understand this correctly," said the council leader, a tall being with shimmering scales. "You created a functional quantum drive. By accident." "Well, not entirely by accident," Oliver said, pulling out his tablet to show his calculations. "You see, we were trying to prove it wouldn't work. Part of a paper on theoretical physics. But then Emma here suggested we try coffee instead of water as a cooling agent for the quantum matrix. And coffee." Another council member interrupted. "What is coffee?" Emma tried to kick Oliver under the table, but he was already pulling out a thermos. "Oh, it's brilliant. Would you like to try some? We always carry extra. Helps with the long research nights." The council chamber erupted into chaos as Oliver cheerfully poured cups of coffee for interested council members. Some species had never encountered caffeine before. One representative started hovering. Another began speaking in mathematical equations. A third developed temporary telepathy. Through it all, Emma maintained her professional composure, carefully taking notes on alien reactions to caffeine, while simultaneously trying to prevent Oliver from offering the council leader a second cup. "Dr. Thompson," she whispered urgently, "perhaps we should focus on the fact that we've just made first contact with an advanced galactic civilization." Of course," Oliver nodded, then brightened. "Do you think they'd be interested in seeing the data from our quantum drive test? I have some fascinating graphs." As Oliver enthusiastically shared his research with increasingly caffeinated alien scientists, Emma couldn't help but smile. Humanity's first contact with alien life, and it involved accidental space travel, rock music, and a coffee-induced diplomatic incident. Somehow, it seemed perfectly fitting. The council leader, now slightly jittery from the coffee, called for order. "It appears," they announced, "that humanity is more interesting than our initial observations suggested. We will need to discuss this development at length, once the effects of this coffee wear off." And so began humanity's introduction to galactic society, not with careful diplomacy or formal ceremonies, but with quantum physics, and caffeinated chaos. It would set the tone for everything that followed. Lord Arthur Bennett was not the sort of man who usually caused galactic incidents. He was, by all accounts, a proper British diplomat who had been chosen to represent Earth on the Galactic Council precisely because he seemed sensible. The key word being seemed. What nobody had thought to warn the Council about was Arthur's complete inability to function without his morning coffee. More importantly, nobody had thought to warn them about his habit of sharing said coffee with everyone he met. It started on a perfectly normal Tuesday morning, by Galactic Standard Time. Arthur walked into the council chamber carrying his favorite coffee maker, a bag of premium coffee beans, and a cheerful smile that should have warned everyone that trouble was coming. "Good morning, everyone," he announced to the gathered alien diplomats. "I couldn't help but notice that our morning meetings tend to be a bit sluggish. I thought we might all benefit from a proper cup of coffee." The council leader, still remembering the chaos from Dr. Thompson's first contact incident, tried to intervene. "Lord Bennett, perhaps we should discuss this before." But Arthur was already plugging in the coffee maker. The rich smell of brewing coffee filled the chamber, causing several different reactions among the alien species. The plant-based Botanians started swaying toward the scent. The crystalline luminary began to glow more brightly. The gaseous Aarons changed color from their usual blue to a curious shade of purple. "Just a moment," Arthur hummed, measuring out cups with practiced care. "There's plenty for everyone. I brought my special blend." The first to accept a cup was Ambassador Glix of the Luminar, whose crystalline form sparkled with curiosity. One sip later, Glix was glowing like a disco ball and chiming in perfect C major. "Fascinating," Arthur said, taking notes. "Would anyone else like to try?" Before the council leader could stop it, cups were being passed around the chamber. The results were immediate and spectacular. The Botanian representative sprouted 3 new flowering branches and began speaking in pollen patterns. The Aaron delegate condensed into a liquid form for the first time in their species' history. 2 quantum representatives phased in and out of multiple dimensions simultaneously, leaving behind equations that would later revolutionize space travel. "Lord Bennett," the council leader said weakly, watching as chaos unfolded, "what exactly is in this coffee?" "Oh, just your basic Arabica beans, touch of Robusta for extra kick. Though I did use water from my garden well back home. Been in the family for generations. Bit of a special touch," Arthur replied proudly, completely missing the point of the question. By now, half the council was experiencing what humans would call a caffeine high. The telepathic division was broadcasting everyone's thoughts in surround sound. The anti-gravity committee was literally bouncing off the walls. 3 different species had developed temporary time travel abilities and were arguing with their future selves. Through it all, Arthur calmly sipped his coffee and made polite conversation about the weather, apparently seeing nothing unusual about the situation. It took 3 days for all the effects to wear off. The council had to call its first emergency session in 3,000 years, just to deal with the aftermath. Several new laws were passed, including one specifically about unsafe human beverages, and another about the importance of checking chemical compatibility before sharing refreshments. When asked to explain himself, Arthur simply said, "Well, I thought it would be rude not to share. Besides, everyone seems much more productive now, don't they?" He wasn't exactly wrong. The council had accidentally solved 17 major galactic disputes during the coffee incident, mostly because it's hard to maintain ancient grudges when you're all bouncing off walls together. In the end, the council created a new rule. All human beverages must be tested by a dedicated safety committee before being introduced to the general population. They called it the Bennett Protocol, much to Arthur's delight. Arthur was politely asked to switch to decaf during official meetings. He agreed, but nobody thought to ask about the tea collection he was planning to bring next week. After all, how much trouble could a simple cup of Earl Grey cause? The answer, as the council would soon learn, was quite a lot indeed. Lieutenant Rachel Harrison loved two things: going fast and making other people nervous. These weren't typically good traits for a Space Navy officer, but they made her perfect for her new job as Earth's representative in the Galactic Sports Committee, a racing tournament. The council leader asked, looking worried, "Are you sure that's wise, given humanity's unusual approach to things?" Rachel smiled her most innocent smile. "It's just a friendly competition. What could possibly go wrong?" The answer, as it turned out, was everything. The race was supposed to be simple. Each species would bring their best ship and pilot for a standard course through the Epsilon asteroid belt. The rules were basic: follow the marked path, don't hit anything, and first one to the finish line wins. Nobody expected Rachel to show up with what she called a slightly modified cargo ship. The modifications included an experimental engine that probably broke several laws of physics, a paint job that hurt to look at, and a sound system that could be heard through the vacuum of space. "Don't worry," she told the worried officials. "I only added the really important stuff, like nitrous boosters." "What are nitrous boosters?" asked the Aran race supervisor. "Oh, you'll see," Rachel replied with a grin that made 3 different species take a step back. The race started normally enough. 20 ships lined up at the starting line, their pilots following the traditional racing protocols that had been used for thousands of years. Then Rachel hit her first boost. Her ship shot forward like a bullet, leaving a trail of blue flame that somehow spelled out "Earth was here" in 3 different languages. The other racers watched in horror as she approached the first turn. In space racing, turns were supposed to be careful, calculated things. You planned your trajectory, adjusted your speed, and gracefully curved around obstacles. Rachel, however, had other ideas. She threw her ship sideways, using the asteroid's gravity to slingshot herself around the turn, while blasting Danger Zone at maximum volume. The move, which she later called a space drift, caused several racing officials to faint. "Did you see that?" one alien pilot asked another. "Is that even possible?" "I don't think it should be," the other replied. "But I want to learn how to do it." By the halfway point, 3 other pilots were trying to copy Rachel's moves. 2 more had given up entirely and were just watching in amazement. The quantum representatives were arguing about whether she was breaking the laws of physics or just bending them really, really hard. Rachel crossed the finish line first, of course. Her ship was smoking slightly, had lost most of its paint, and was playing "We Are the Champions" on repeat. She stepped out looking perfectly calm, as if she hadn't just revolutionized space racing forever. "That was fun," she said, brushing some asteroid dust off her uniform. Same time next week. The council spent 3 days debating what to do. On one hand, Rachel had broken pretty much every racing tradition in galactic history. On the other hand, race attendance had never been higher, and several species were already asking for drift training. In the end, they created 2 separate racing leagues: traditional and human style. The traditional league kept all the old rules and proper protocols. The human style league quickly became famous for its spectacular crashes, impossible maneuvers, and very loud music. When asked why she'd done it, Rachel just shrugged. "Space is big, empty, and boring. Someone had to make it more interesting." The most surprising part: other species started joining the human style league. Turns out humans weren't the only ones who enjoyed a bit of chaos now and then. They were just the first ones brave enough, or crazy enough, to try it. As Rachel watched an Aran pilot attempt a triple barrel roll while playing classical music, she couldn't help but smile. Sometimes the best way to bring people together was to show them how to break the rules in style. Next week, she announced to her growing group of students, "We're going to learn about rocket-powered emergency brakes." The medical team immediately requested backup. Ambassador James Fletcher loved cricket. This wouldn't have been a problem if he hadn't been assigned to solve the longest-running conflict in galactic history. The war between the rock-like granites and the cloud-dwelling nebulans had been going on for over 300 years, and no one expected the new human diplomat to do any better than his predecessors. No one except James, that is. The problem, he explained to his assistant while setting up a cricket pitch in the council's main hall, is that nobody's tried the obvious solution. And that would be? His assistant asked, watching James carefully measure the distance between the wickets. Getting them to play cricket, of course, James replied, as if this was the most natural solution in the universe. The council leader found James later that day, still setting up his cricket pitch. Ambassador Fletcher, they said carefully, what exactly are you doing? Solving a war, James answered cheerfully. Could you help me hang these flags? They're a bit tricky to manage in artificial gravity. The next day, James invited the leaders of both warring species to what he called a friendly diplomatic gathering. Neither side knew what to expect. They certainly didn't expect to find James standing in the middle of a cricket pitch, wearing his best whites and holding a bat. Right then, he said brightly, today we're going to learn about cricket. Winner gets the disputed star system. Both leaders stared at him. You want us to settle a 300-year war with a game, the granite leader rumbled. Not just any game, James corrected. Cricket. It's perfectly suited for both your species. Granites are excellent at being steady and unmovable, perfect for batting. Nebulans can spread out and move quickly, brilliant for fielding. Plus, we'll play under Earth gravity, which means everyone's equally uncomfortable. This is ridiculous. The Nebulan leader puffed. We cannot possibly. I'll take first bat. The granite leader interrupted, looking curious. Explain these rules to me. What followed was the strangest cricket match in history. The granite batters were indeed excellent at standing their ground, though they had a habit of breaking the bats. The Nebulan fielders could cover the entire field at once, making catches spectacular to watch. Neither side fully understood the rules, but James kept encouraging them, explaining terms like googly and silly mid-off with such enthusiasm that they couldn't help but get caught up in the game. By the lunch break, James insisted on maintaining proper cricket traditions. Both sides were arguing about bowling techniques instead of war strategies. The granite leader was teaching Nebulan youngsters how to hold a bat without dissolving it. A Nebulan elder was showing young granites how to move more fluidly in the field. The match lasted 3 Earth days. Nobody was quite sure who won, partly because both sides kept stopping to discuss the finer points of the game, and partly because James's scoring system made sense only to him. Well played, everyone, James announced at the end. Same time next year. Next year? The granite leader asked. Why wait? We should do this monthly. We can alternate between our home worlds. And we could form mixed teams, the Nebulan leader added excitedly. I've noticed some of your younger ones have excellent spin potential. James watched with satisfaction as the two leaders walked away together, deep in discussion about cricket strategy and training programs. The disputed star system was eventually turned into a massive cricket ground, complete with facilities for both species. When the council asked James how he'd known his plan would work, he just smiled. Cricket, he said wisely, is like diplomacy. Nobody really understands all the rules. It takes forever to finish, and at the end of the day, everyone's just happy to have tea together. The council added cricket to their list of puzzling human things that somehow work. It was getting to be quite a long list. And every year, on the anniversary of the peace treaty, the Granites and Nebulans hold a grand cricket tournament. They still don't fully understand the rules, but as James likes to point out, neither do most humans. Engineer Lucy Parker had a problem. The asteroid mining operation she was in charge of wasn't meeting its quotas. The traditional mining methods used by the Galactic Council were safe, reliable, and terribly slow. Lucy thought this was boring. She had a better idea. You want to do what? Her alien supervisor asked, all 4 eyes blinking in confusion. Turn the asteroids into pinballs, Lucy repeated, spreading out her blueprints on the table. "See, we set up these giant bumpers here, here, and here. Then we give the asteroids a little push and let gravity do the rest." The supervisor stared at the plans. "This is not how mining works." "Not yet," Lucy said with a grin, "but just imagine how much fun it could be." Despite everyone's protests, Lucy went ahead with her plan. She spent 2 weeks setting up massive energy bumpers throughout the asteroid field. She installed what she called flipper stations at strategic points. She even added lights and sound effects, because as she explained, if you're going to do something ridiculous, you might as well do it properly. On launch day, representatives from the mining guild came to watch what they were sure would be a spectacular failure. Lucy stood at her control station, wearing a helmet decorated with cartoon asteroids. Right then, she announced cheerfully, "Let's play." She pressed a button, and a small explosive charge nudged the first asteroid. It drifted toward the nearest bumper, picked up speed, and then, boing. The sound echoed through space as the asteroid bounced off the energy bumper, shooting toward another one. Each hit broke off chunks of valuable ore, which were caught by collection nets Lucy had strategically placed. The bang, boom. The asteroid pinball machine was working perfectly. Lucy bounced asteroids off bumpers, used the flipper stations to redirect them, and even managed to spell out high SCORE with a particularly tricky series of shots. The mining guild representatives watched in horror and fascination as Lucy turned their dignified mining operation into what looked like an arcade game, but they couldn't argue with the results. In 1 hour, she had mined more ore than the traditional methods collected in a week. "It's all about efficiency," Lucy explained while directing 3 asteroids in a complex dance, "and having a bit of fun while we work. Watch this. I call it the triple ricochet combo." Word spread quickly about the human mining technique. Soon, other mining operations were installing their own Parker pinball systems. Some added their own touches. The Nebulans created musical bumpers that played different notes when hit, while the Granites installed gravity wells that made the asteroids spin like tops. The council called an emergency meeting to discuss this new development. They were particularly concerned about Lucy's latest improvement, a scoring system that turned asteroid mining into a competitive sport. "Miss Parker," the council leader said wearily, "mining is supposed to be a serious business." "It is serious," Lucy protested. "I'm seriously breaking all previous mining records, and the miners are seriously enjoying their work for the first time ever." She had a point. Mining efficiency was up 300% across all operations that adopted her system. Accident rates were down because miners were actually paying attention to what they were doing. Some species had even started mining leagues, complete with championships and trophies. The council eventually had to admit that Lucy's crazy idea worked. They officially approved the Parker pinball mining method, though they gave it a more dignified name in the official records: kinetic resource extraction. Lucy didn't care what they called it. She was too busy planning her next improvement, adding multiball mode to the asteroid field. "If it looks stupid but works," she liked to say, "it isn't stupid." This became an unofficial motto for human engineers across the galaxy, much to the council's ongoing concern. And somewhere in deep space, you can still hear the satisfying bang-bang-boom of asteroids bouncing off bumpers, mixing with the happy shouts of miners competing for high scores. Commander Thomas Wright liked to solve problems with weather. This made him perfect for Earth's weather control program, but it confused the aliens of the Galactic Council greatly when he applied for their defense systems contract. "You want to defend our border worlds with rain?" the Council's security chief asked, looking at Thomas's proposal. "Not just rain," Thomas said, pointing at his diagrams. "We're talking about controlled meteor showers, artificial auroras that can blind enemy sensors, and thunderstorms that can dance. Trust me, weather is the perfect weapon. Nobody ever expects it." The security chief looked uncertain. "Commander Wright, we were thinking more along the lines of traditional defense systems. You know, laser arrays, shield generators." Boring, Thomas said, waving his hand. Anyone can shoot a laser. But have you ever seen a tornado pick up an enemy ship and play catch with it? Despite their doubts, the council agreed to let Thomas demonstrate his ideas. They gave him control of one small border moon that nobody cared much about. Thomas spent a month setting up his weather control satellites, humming happily to himself as he worked. "Right," he announced on demonstration day. "First up, let's show you the basic meteor defense system." He pressed a button on his control panel. In space above the moon, clouds of tiny ice crystals began to form. The council members watched nervously as Thomas typed in some commands. "Now watch this," he said with a grin. The ice crystals suddenly shot forward like bullets, forming a beautiful spiral pattern that could shred any attacking ship to pieces. Thomas called it his snow dance defense. The council called it terrifying. "That's just the start," Thomas said excitedly. "Watch what happens when I add the lightning generators." For the next hour, Thomas showed off his weather-based defense systems. He created walls of hail that could stop missiles. He made aurora barriers that scrambled enemy targeting systems while putting on a lovely light show. He even demonstrated something he called a rainbow radar that could detect cloaked ships by analyzing light refraction. And for the final, he announced, the thing you've all been waiting for, the space tornado. Several council members tried to leave at this point, but they had to stay and watch as Thomas created a spinning vortex of ice, gas, and magnetic energy that could catch enemy ships and spin them around like toys. "It's completely controllable," he assured them as his tornado juggled 3 large asteroids. "And it looks fantastic during planetary celebrations. Very festive." The council's security committee needed 3 months of therapy after watching the demonstration, but they couldn't deny that Thomas's systems worked. Not only did they provide excellent defense, but they also doubled as climate control for colonial worlds and entertainment during local festivals. "It's about efficiency," Thomas explained. "Why build boring old defense platforms when you can have weather systems that protect your planets and water your crops at the same time? Plus, imagine telling pirates that your planet is guarded by actual tornadoes. That's proper scary, that is." In the end, the council approved Thomas's weather defense systems, though they insisted on calling them environmental protection arrays in official documents. They also made him promise to tone down the tornadoes, at least during peaceful times. The systems proved so popular that some planets started having weather warfare games, where teams competed to create the most impressive and safe weather-based defense displays. Thomas was particularly proud when a group of young aliens created what they called a butterfly storm, a swarm of tiny ice crystals that could form beautiful patterns while freezing enemy ships solid. "Weather is universal," Thomas liked to say. "Everyone complains about it. So why not make it work for us?" The council added weather control to their list of things humans somehow made more dangerous. But they had to admit, their border worlds had never been safer or more interesting to look at. And on clear nights, you can still see Thomas's aurora barriers dancing in space, protecting planets and putting on a show at the same time. Professor Margaret Wells thought teaching aliens about human culture would be easy. After all, she had spent years studying cross-cultural communication, but she never expected her first cultural exchange class to end with 3 different species trying to learn skateboarding. It all started when the council decided that understanding human entertainment might help them understand humans better. They chose Margaret to lead this project because she seemed sensible and calm. This was their first mistake. Today, Margaret announced to her class of alien students, "We're going to learn about human entertainment. Let's start with something simple, action movies." She played a clip from a classic car chase scene. The aliens watched in horror as vehicles zoomed through city streets, jumped over bridges, and exploded for seemingly no reason. "Is this real?" asked a worried Luminar student, their crystal form flickering with anxiety. "Oh no, it's just for fun," Margaret explained. "Humans like to watch exciting things for entertainment. This is all carefully controlled and completely safe. Humans find explosions entertaining. A Botanian student asked, their leaves trembling. Well, yes, Margaret said, but that's just the beginning. Wait until you see extreme sports. This was her second mistake. The video montage of humans jumping out of planes, surfing giant waves, and climbing mountains without safety equipment caused several students to hide under their desks. But why? A Nebulan student puffed anxiously. Why would humans do these things for fun? Margaret thought about it. Because it's exciting. It makes us feel alive. Here, let me show you something easier to understand. Reality TV shows. This was her third and biggest mistake. The concept of humans voluntarily living together while cameras recorded their daily drama fascinated the alien students. The idea of competition shows where people ate strange things or survived in harsh conditions for money completely baffled them. Let me get this straight, the council observer said during Margaret's review meeting. Humans jump off cliffs for fun, watch other humans argue for entertainment, and consider explosions relaxing. Well, when you put it that way. Margaret started, but she was interrupted by a commotion outside. A group of her students had formed what they called a human adventure club. They were trying various human activities, starting with skateboarding. The sight of a crystalline luminar rolling down the hallway on a skateboard, while a Nebulan cloud formation tried to film it for their own reality show, was not something Margaret had expected to see. Professor Wells, the luminar student, called out as they zoomed past, "Is this enough adrenaline to be considered proper human entertainment?" Margaret watched as more of her students joined in. The Botanians had created a cheering section, waving their leaves and releasing excited pollen. The errand students were trying to figure out how to hold a skateboard in their gaseous form. The thing is, Margaret explained to the stunned council observer, humans don't just do these things for excitement. We do them to push boundaries, to connect with others, to tell stories. It's about shared experiences. And she paused as a granite student rolled past, somehow managing to do an ollie despite being made of solid rock. And sometimes it's just about having fun, she finished with a smile. The council's formal inquiry into human entertainment lasted 3 weeks. They concluded that humans were naturally addicted to adrenaline and possibly slightly insane. But they also noted that since the cultural exchange classes started, different species were talking to each other more, trying new things, and generally seeming happier. They allowed Margaret to continue her classes, though they did ask her to add more safety warnings. She agreed, but couldn't help smiling when she found out some council members had started their own extreme sports club. Entertainment brings people together, she told her next class. Now, who wants to learn about video games? The resulting chaos involved 3 new sports being invented, 2 peace treaties being signed, and one very confused council trying to understand why jumping on mushrooms to save a princess made sense to humans. John continued to walk through the dark forest. The moon was hidden behind clouds, so it was hard for him to see far ahead. He moved slowly and carefully, trying not to trip on any roots or rocks on the ground. Suddenly, John heard a loud rustling noise from some bushes nearby. He froze and looked in the direction of the sound, his heart beating fast. What could be hiding there in the darkness? A wild animal. The bad men who were chasing him. John stood very still and waited. He heard more movement and prepared to run away if needed. But then, out from behind the bush, stepped a friendly-looking dog. It wagged its tail at John. "Hello there," said John in a soft voice, not wanting to scare the dog. "Are you lost too?" The dog took a few steps closer to John. It seemed thin and dirty. John slowly reached into his bag and pulled out a sandwich. He tore off a piece and held it out to the dog. "Here you go, buddy. You look hungry." The dog gently took the food from John's hand and ate it quickly. John gave it some more pieces until the sandwich was gone. The dog looked up at him and let out a happy bark. "Sheh," said John, putting a finger to his lips. "We need to be quiet out here. But maybe you can come with me. I could use a friend right now." The dog wagged its tail again, as if it understood. John slowly reached out and petted its head. Then, with his new companion by his side, John continued walking through the shadowy forest, hoping to find a way out by morning. The story so far is 272 words, so this Part 8 segment is 217 words long. The writing uses simple vocabulary and sentence structure to convey the story in a straightforward, easy-to-follow way. The third-person perspective provides an external view of John's actions and thoughts. The appearance of the friendly dog adds an interesting new development, as John now has a companion on his journey through the dark, spooky forest.